My name is Daniel, and for most of my life, I believed I had a normal family. Not perfect, not terrible, just normal. A working father, a caring mother, family dinners on Sundays, birthdays celebrated with cheap cake and awkward smiles. Nothing that would ever make it onto Reddit. At least, that's what I thought. I'm 29 now, but this story really began when I was 12. That was the year my mother started crying in the kitchen late at night. Not loudly, just quietly enough that you could hear it if you were pretending to sleep and listening too hard. I used to lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of pain makes an adult cry without making a sound. My father always said she was just tired. She worries too much, he'd say, sipping his coffee, never looking at her. That's just how your mother is. And I believed him. Because when you're a kid, you trust the adult who sounds confident. As I grew older, the house changed. Not in obvious ways. There were no screaming fights, no broken plates, no slammed doors. Just a coldness. Like walking into a room where the heater is on, but the warmth never reaches you. My dad became distant. Always working late. Always tired. Always on his phone, face turned slightly away from us, thumb moving too fast across the screen. My mom became smaller, quieter. She stopped laughing at TV shows. Stopped humming while cooking. Stopped correcting my grammar when I spoke too fast. At 16, I finally asked her what was wrong. She smiled. That sad, practiced smile that adults use when they don't want to tell the truth. Nothing, sweetheart, she said. Some things are just heavy. You don't need to carry them. I wish I had pushed harder. Fast forward to when I was 24. I had just graduated college and moved back home to save money. My parents had officially separated, but still lived in the same house. They told everyone it was temporary, that they were figuring things out. They weren't. My dad slept in the guest room. My mom slept with the TV on, volume low, like she was afraid of silence. One night, my dad asked me to sit down with him. I need to tell you something, he said, folding his hands like a man about to confess to a crime. I thought maybe he was sick, or leaving, or in debt. I have another family, he said. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because my brain refused to accept it. That's not funny, I said. I'm serious. He explained it calmly, too calmly, like he was reading instructions. He had been seeing another woman for over 15 years. Longer than I could remember. They had 2 children together, a boy and a girl, both younger than me. I felt like I was falling through the floor. You cheated on mom, I asked. He corrected me. I wouldn't call it cheating. It was complicated. That sentence still makes my blood boil. He told me my mother knew. That she had known for years. That she had accepted it to keep the family together. I ran to my mom's room. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, hands folded, eyes already red. Like she'd been preparing for this moment. It's true, she said quietly. I didn't want you to know. I screamed. I screamed at her for staying. At him for lying. At both of them for destroying my idea of family and calling it love. But the worst part hadn't even come yet. A week later, my dad told me about the house. The house we lived in. The one my mom had decorated. The one I grew up in. It wasn't fully ours. He had bought it under a trust. Half of it was legally intended for his other children when they turned 18. My mother knew. She had lived for years in a house that was never truly hers. I watched something break inside her that day. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet collapse. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She nodded. And I realized something terrifying. My mother had sacrificed her entire life to protect me from pain. She had swallowed betrayal, humiliation, loneliness, all so I could grow up thinking I had a normal family. And my father had let her. That night, I confronted him again. You destroyed her, I said. He sighed. She chose to stay. That was the moment I stopped seeing him as my father. Over the next year, everything fell apart. The other woman moved closer. The children started visiting. My dad wanted us to bond. I refused. My mom filed for divorce, but it was messy. Lawyers, papers, silent car rides. One night, I found her in the kitchen again, crying softly, same as when I was 12. Only this time, I sat beside her. I'm sorry, she whispered. I thought I was protecting you. I took her hand. You did, I said. But now it's my turn. I helped her find a small apartment, helped her move, watched her relearn how to live without constantly waiting for disappointment. She started smiling again. Real smiles. The kind that reached the eyes. My father remarried within a year. He invited me to the wedding. I didn't go. Now, years later, people still ask why I'm so distant with my dad. They say things like, "He's still your father. People make mistakes. You should forgive." But here's the truth they don't like hearing. Some betrayals don't explode. They erode. They wear people down slowly, quietly, until what's left is barely recognizable. And forgiveness doesn't mean access. I didn't lose my family that day. I finally saw it clearly. And sometimes, that's more painful than losing it altogether. I thought the story ended when my father remarried and my mother started a new life. I was wrong, because some consequences don't show up immediately. They wait. About 2 years after the divorce, my mom got sick. At first, it was small things. Fatigue, headaches, forgetting where she put her keys. She joked about it, saying, "Guess I'm finally getting old." She was 52. One night, she collapsed in the bathroom. I found her on the floor, confused, scared, asking me why I looked so worried. At the hospital, doctors spoke in careful sentences. Too careful. The kind that sound gentle but mean something terrible. Early onset neurological disease. Stress-induced acceleration. Years of emotional trauma listed casually, like bullet points. I sat there, listening, and all I could think was, this didn't start last year. This started decades ago. I told my father. He went quiet on the phone. "That's unfortunate," he said. Unfortunate. Not "I'm sorry." Not "how can I help." Just unfortunate. He visited once. Stood at the foot of her hospital bed like a distant relative. Brought flowers that stayed untouched. My mom smiled politely. She always did. After that, he stopped calling. His new family needed him, he said. The kids had school. His wife was stressed. Life was busy. Life had always been busy, just never too busy to betray. Months passed. My mom got worse. Some days she remembered everything. Some days she asked me where my father was, like she was still waiting for him to come home. Those days broke me. One afternoon, she looked at me and said, "Did I do the right thing?" I didn't know what she meant at first. "Staying," she whispered. "For you." I swallowed so hard it hurt. "You did what you thought was right," I said. "That matters." She nodded slowly. That night, I cried alone for the first time in years. Then came the call that changed everything. A lawyer. Apparently, my father was updating his will. He wanted to be fair to everyone, which meant the house, the one my mother had lived in, the one she had suffered in, was now officially going to be divided. Again, including the part she had fought so hard to keep after the divorce. I drove to my father's house that same day. I didn't knock. I rang the bell and waited. His wife opened the door. Younger than my mother. Softer voice. Eyes that avoided mine. "We weren't expecting you," she said. "I'm not here for you," I replied. My father came out, already defensive. "You're causing a scene," he said. "No," I said calmly. "You did. Years ago." I told him about the diagnosis, about the doctors, about the word trauma written in her medical file. He looked uncomfortable, shifted his weight. "I didn't cause that," he said. "She chose her life." That sentence was the last straw. I told him I would contest the will, that I had documents, messages, proof, that I was my mother, quiet, patient, forgiving. I was done being careful with his feelings. For the first time, he looked scared. Legal battles followed. Long ones. Ugly ones. His other children found out about me. They were confused, angry, hurt. I didn't blame them. We were all victims of the same man, just at different times. In the end, the court ruled partially in our favor. My mother kept her share, enough to feel like justice, even if it wasn't complete. She never fully recovered. But something changed. One evening, sitting by the window, she took my hand and said, "I'm glad I left. Even sick, even tired." She was free. My father tried to reach out later. Apologies, regrets, long messages about family and forgiveness. I read them once, then deleted them, because forgiveness is a reward for someone who refuses accountability. My mother passed away peacefully last spring. At her funeral, my father stood at the back, alone. He didn't come up to me. He didn't need to. Some people don't lose their families in a single moment. They lose them choice by choice. And when they finally look around and see no one left, that's not tragedy. That's consequence. After my mother's funeral, I thought the worst part was over. I was wrong again. Grief doesn't end when the coffin is lowered into the ground. Sometimes, that's when it finally gets loud. The house felt empty in a way I had never experienced before. Not quiet empty, like the walls themselves were waiting for someone who would never come back. I stayed there for a while. The same kitchen where she used to cry quietly. The same window where she would sit and watch the street, pretending she wasn't waiting for anyone. I found her journals while cleaning. She never meant for anyone to read them. They were hidden behind old photo albums, wrapped in a scarf that still smelled like her perfume. At first, I told myself I wouldn't open them. Then I did. Page after page, year after year, written in the same neat handwriting. No dramatic language. No accusations. Just facts. Dates. Feelings she never said out loud. I stayed today because Daniel looked happy at dinner. He promised it would end. I feel invisible. I am so tired. If I leave, everything breaks. The last entry was written a few months before she got sick. I don't think my body can carry this anymore. I sat on the floor and sobbed until my chest hurt. That was when anger finally replaced grief. Not explosive anger, focused anger. The kind that makes you stand up and decide something ends with you. A week later, I received a letter from my father. Handwritten, careful, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing up too late. He wrote about regret, about mistakes, about how life didn't turn out the way he imagined. He said he wanted to meet, to talk, to heal. I stared at that letter for a long time. Then I remembered my mother asking me, did I do the right thing? And I realized something important. Closure isn't something you owe people who hurt you. It's something you give yourself. But still I agreed to meet him. Not for him, for me. We met at a cough halfway between our houses. Neutral territory, public, safe. He looked older, smaller. The confidence that once filled every room was gone. He smiled when he saw me. I didn't smile back. I'm sorry, he said almost immediately. For everything. I waited. For details. For ownership. For truth. But all he said was, I didn't know how to stop. I finally spoke. You didn't try, I said calmly. You just learned how to live with what you were doing. He flinched. He told me about his loneliness now. About how his new marriage wasn't what he expected. How the children were distant. How he felt like no one really knew him. I listened. Then I told him about the journals. About the doctors. About the word trauma. About how my mother's body paid the price for his comfort. He cried. Real tears. And for a moment, I felt something close to pity. But then he said something that erased it all. She could have left. I stood up. That's where this ends, I said. He reached for my arm. Please. I don't want to lose you too. I looked at his hand. Then at his face. You didn't lose me, I said. You never had me. You just didn't notice. I walked out. I blocked his number that same day. Months passed. I moved to a different city. Changed jobs, started therapy, learned how to sit with silence without fearing it. Sometimes, I'd hear her voice in my head. Small comments, gentle corrections. The way she used to say my name when she was proud. One night, I dreamed of her. She was younger, healthy, smiling. She didn't say anything. She just looked relieved. That was the night I finally slept through until morning. Last winter, I got another message. From my half-sister. She said she had found my name while going through old documents. She said she was confused, hurt, angry, but also curious. She asked if I would meet her. I hesitated. Then I remembered something else my mother wrote. Secrets don't protect children. They only delay the damage. We met. She looked nervous, just like I probably did at her age. We talked for hours. About him. About lies. About how growing up inside a broken truth messes with your sense of self. At one point, she said, I thought we were the real family. I nodded. So did I. We didn't become close overnight. but we became honest. And that mattered. As for my father, I heard he moved again. Smaller place. Quieter life. Less people. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks about my mother when the house is silent. If he remembers the way she used to hum while cooking. If guilt ever keeps him awake. Then I remind myself, it's not my job to wonder. My job is to live the life she never got the chance to live freely. To choose honesty over comfort. To leave when something is wrong. To never confuse endurance with love. People love stories about dramatic endings. Big confrontations. Perfect justice. But real life rarely gives that. Sometimes, the ending is quieter. A son who breaks the cycle. A woman who is finally believed even after she's gone. A truth that survives long enough to matter. And that's enough.